actually, you're making me think of like how angry I used to get at people who would just tell you like, "Oh, you need to love yourself more."
Dude, I get this so hard because this was a thing that I experienced. If it's conceptual, and it's not just self-love, but it's life in general. If it's just conceptual, you're going to keep feeling stuck and it survives.
Yeah.
That's why I was laughing because I know you'll know this.
Yeah. I just pluck someone from today and they're like in the middle of their hell and I just put them exactly where they think they want to be. It's kind of like with the lottery. They'll sabotage.
'Cause at the end of the day, you're the one with the crown on your head. You're the one that gets to choose. Welcome to Mindfully Sovereign, the podcast that invites you to reclaim your feminine self-authority and unleash the abundance within. My name is Sapha, I am your host, and I'm here to help guide you past your limiting beliefs and into the heart of your unwavering and undeniable power. This podcast is all about reclaiming your feminine self-authority, learning the art of self-seduction, and awakening your inner goddess so that you can become an aligned match to your most abundant life yet. So grab a cup of tea, get cozy, and get ready to become mindfully sovereign. All right, everybody, welcome back. I have a super special guest with me today, and I think you're going to love her. The conversation is going to be great. So let me introduce her. Her name is Cassandra Lambert, or Cassandra Love Lambert. She is a sweetheart. She has so much love and energy to give. So I will let her introduce herself. Cassandra, can you say hello and share a little bit about who you are and the work that you do?
Yes. Oh, thank you, Safa. It's so good to be here. I'm so excited to share whatever I can to the ladies. And actually, my journey, childhood, lots of abuse, sexual abuse, emotionally unavailable parents, then navigating that as a teenager where my mom was really narcissistic. Um, she was really like competing with me for male attention, which was really weird for being that age. And then 20s, getting into abusive relationships, facing being a single mom by 30. And I had done a lot of healing work in my 20s. However, when I had my daughter, it was like I didn't do anything. And it was like a trauma capsule opened and I had to start over from scratch. And that's where I actually found somatic work. And that is what brought me here to share anything and everything about it because it's been like almost 2 decades of healing and everything and finding my worth as a woman, finding my voice as a woman, even navigating like my sexual energy or my sexuality as a woman has been a big thing. So yeah, I'm just here to help however I can, and yeah, let's get into it.
I love it. Okay, I have heard you speak a couple of times, obviously, but whenever we talk, first of all, right off, I feel like we're similar souls living really interesting experiences that mirror themselves in certain ways. And so when I
Mhm.
hear you speak about these things, I want to get into the somatic part of it. I also want to speak to the process that we go through as women integrating the self and reclaiming the self. That's why that word is so important to me. I've used it
Mhm.
forever and it just continues to feel more and more important the older I get. After we've been in a situation where we've felt at a loss of self authority, self power, self
Yeah.
ownership. And like you, I also experienced sexual abuse as a child and dealt with a narcissistic parent and
Mhm.
just,
Yeah.
toxic relationships. So I've with a lot of parallels here to talk about.
Mhm.
But let's dive a little bit into what this experience is like in a lived reality where you've felt like you've lost some sort of self autonomy, and what are some of the tools that we can use to help us get back into self? I would love to hear what your perspective is on that.
Yeah, you're giving me goosebumps. Yeah, there are a lot of similarities. I every time I hear you talk to, I'm like, oh yeah, even more like kindredy. And I love that. But yeah, so like some of the key, like, oh, actually, you're making me think of like how angry I used to get at people who would just tell you like, oh, you need to love yourself more. Oh, you need to love
Mm.
yourself more. And I used to get so mad because I'm like, well, how? How do I do that? Right? Like nobody had the answer of how. And that also used to frustrate the heck out of me because it wasn't like I wasn't committed. It's just you're not telling me what the actual heck to do, right? So I have found for myself how to love myself was first with boundaries, right?
Mm.
I wasn't allowed to have boundaries when I was young. I didn't even understand boundaries, right? And then also getting into certain relationships where they made you feel wrong for needing certain things for safety, or making it wrong if like you didn't like something, which made me consistently go to like try to heal myself because I thought that something was inherently wrong with me. And
Mhm.
when I
Mhm.
would have come down to realize, it took until after my daughter and in my mid 30s. But you're allowed to have any boundary that you need to make yourself feel safe. And I like to use this example because it was one that I struggled with for a long time: porn. I
Mhm.
cannot be in a relationship with someone who watches porn, partakes in porn, looks at porn, right? And so, of course, I kept getting into relationships with people who made me feel like something's wrong with you. You need to be on drugs. You need to go get therapy, right? And I finally had a therapist tell me, like, no, you're allowed to have that boundary. That just isn't a match for you, right? So, boundaries is a huge one, right? And not making yourself be okay with things just because, oh, everyone else is okay with this, so I must be too, right? Because there's also like a lot of polyamory in the Bay Area. And so, like, that was making me feel wrong for actually, I'm monogamous, right? So, just because everyone else is doing it, you're allowed to have that boundary if it makes you feel safe, and really tuning into like your nervous system, right? Because we have capacity for things. And if something takes you so far out of your capacity that you're constantly in hypervigilance or you're constantly in fight or flight, you're allowed to put a boundary there. And in fact, your body is screaming at you to put a boundary there, right? So that was one of the first pieces for me in really loving myself and regaining some kind of empowerment there. Because before that, I just felt like everything's happening to me. I'm a victim. I have no choice. Like, but that piece right there just really set me on a whole new trajectory.
Mhm. Yeah. I love that so much. I'm feeling it in my own body, and it's just such a breath of fresh air. I don't know that we always have the depth of conversations needed
Mhm,
for our life experiences. I think that sometimes we don't recognize our own discomfort when speaking to someone who is in pain or who's gone through something that we ourselves don't understand because our lived experience has been very different. And I think we are too quick to, with no malice, or sometimes there can be, depending on who the person
mhm,
is. But for the most part, let's assume that this is coming from a person who had no malice, but we're too quick to bypass and to dismiss. This is one of the things that really sort of rancors me a little bit about spaces where self-help has maybe lost its way a little bit, or where spirituality has maybe lost its groundedness a little bit, where we use all of these bypassy terms and thoughts and ideas and not put them in a space where there
mhm,
can be nuance, where there can be fluidity, where there
mhm,
can be expansiveness, and where they can fit the person, not the quote unquote, not that this is what it is, but not the quote unquote diagnosis, or
mhm,
not the idea of what it is that we've labeled it. And I say that to say, when you were talking about, oh, I hate it. And people used to say, just love yourself. Dude, I get this so hard because this was a thing that I experienced with my eating disorder, as well as later post toxic relationship. There are certain phrases, certain words, certain things that just get thrown at us, and they can be very self dismissive, and they can be very, very harmful. And I say self dismissive because I think we take them and we
mhm.
use them, sort of, we weaponize them against ourselves to go, well,
100%.
it's true. I'm not blah enough. It's not even just the good enough anymore part. It's like, oh, I'm not spiritual enough, or I'm not grateful enough, or I'm not whatever you want to say. But it is important. And I'm so grateful that you brought that up. But it is important for us to go deeper into these conversations and understand, like, look, this is where I believe self love, if it's conceptual, and it's not just self love, but it's life in general. If it's just conceptual, you're going to keep feeling stuck.
Yeah.
If it's just knowledge based, if it's just in your mind, if it's just something that you've been talking about, you're going to keep feeling stuck and being stuck, because it's
Mhm,
not about that. It's about a lived experience. It's about
mhm,
embodiment. We've been talking so much about embodiment in this season. I love
mhm,
it because it's my language, but it's so important for us to recognize it is a lived action. And this
mhm,
is where we get to fall in love with the self. It's where we get to ask the questions, where that self romancing comes in. And I love this in particular for the work that you do, because I believe that this is a lot where that somatic work comes in.
mhm.
So let's dive a little bit into that. tell me, as if I
Mhm.
didn't know, tell me a little bit about somatic work, how it works, and we'll start there. We'll further it from there.
Yeah, so whenever I think of somatic work, right, like the book The Body Keeps the Score comes to mind, right? Because it just really articulates like how we store it in our bodies, right? And that's also why traditional talk therapy alone doesn't make you like it doesn't take you the full distance because traditional talk therapy is really operating from logic. Same with like the self-help and personal development world. It's very logic based. And the challenge with that is that we hold it in our bodies and in our nervous system and in our fight or flight part of our brain, the amygdala, and our organs too, right? So somatic work just addresses releasing what we're holding in our bodies. And what I have found the most powerful in releasing has been self validation. This is why one of my favorite modalities is actually EFT tapping. One, because you could do it for yourself in addition to practitioner. How often you go to a session, it's only once a week, and you're like, I need my person more, right? So you actually have something you can take with you to use daily to support yourself, right? And then also, it's about validating exactly and embracing exactly what you're feeling wherever you're feeling it. And as you do that, that part of you feels heard, acknowledged, seen. And it's like, ah, okay, I can relax, like, and it releases, right? Versus trying to force yourself to be different or trying to avoid it or distract yourself or try to numb it out, like all the things that don't work. And then it gets louder, louder, louder because every part of us wants is to be heard, seen, and acknowledged. And through that process, it just lightens, it loosens, it releases. And I love that about EFT for sure.
Mhm. I love
Mhm.
that. I think that we too often, because the thing is we're not taught about this. I think we're taught about how to eat, sort of. I think we're taught how to put a Band-Aid over the things that we're feeling, but we're not really ever taught how to sit with that feeling and
Mm-mm.
experience it and allow it to move through without it ruling us. It's not a conversation that we have. And when it comes to the nervous system, we don't talk about the nervous system. Literally, unless you've gone to a yoga class or unless it happened upon the
Some
body keeps the
effort,
score
yeah.
or something like or EFT or you've done something EMDR, unless you've done something like that, there's really not a whole lot of conversation around this in our society, even today. Like you'd think 2024 by now we would have gone a little bit more verbose or in your face about it, but it's still something that we don't know too much about. And what I love about this is I want our listeners to and our viewers to understand this. So the thing about the nervous system is it's not just something that, okay, you have it, it's there, and it turns on when you're going to get eaten by a lion and then it
Yeah.
turns off and then you're fine. Like I wish that that was the case. I mean, maybe actually don't wish that that was the case, but it would be simpler in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But what it does is your nervous system is constantly awake. And when you've experienced something in your life, your body doesn't operate the way that your brain does, in the sense that if you've experienced trauma right now, for example, in a few days, your body's still feeling that trauma
As
unless
if
you've
it's
assessed.
happening. Yeah, too.
Uh-huh.
As if it's happening right
Exactly.
now. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
100%.
in real time. There's no present, past, future. There's only present.
Mhm.
And so your body doesn't, if you don't know how to integrate and how to regulate and how to come back to a
Mhm.
place of release, it's very difficult to find that what we call the rest and digest state, right? Where you actually are at ease and in homeostasis in your body. Otherwise, we stay in fight, flight, freeze, or fawn.
Mhm.
So that's one of those conversations that we don't have often enough. What has been, or what was, I think, the most powerful moment for you to really notice that in your body after sitting with the process of somatic learning, having gone through all of the trauma and having gone through the things that you had gone through? Because you said this happened after you had your kid.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So when I had my daughter, like I had been already on the healing journey, since my early 20s. But like anything I did before, and I did a lot, right? Like I was addicted to and especially like all the hypey things, right? I was doing Reiki, I was the crystals, I was like going with shamans, doing ayahuasca, I was
Mhm.
doing it all, right? Like healing, healing, healing.
Yeah.
However, when I had her, it was as if I did nothing. And I was like, oh my God, what am I supposed to do here? It was very overwhelming, trauma capsule, just it was just the world became the scariest place all over again, as if I hadn't, worked through anything. Part
Mhm.
of it was also, caused because my body changed, and I actually went through postpartum, which I didn't even realize at the time that I was going through postpartum. Um, and I was around my mom, which wasn't the best, right? Because she was criticizing me for it,
Mm.
guilting me. So, like, all the childhood wounds were also very present because I was around my mom a lot, because facing single momhood, right? So, it was like this container created to kind of catapult me to something better. It just didn't feel so great in the moment. But yeah, one of the first things too I had to repair was my connection to a higher power. And this also brings up worth, right? I felt so forgotten. I felt so unworthy. I felt so not cared for. And I felt so angry. Like, if there's a higher power, why did it allow me to go through all this stuff, especially so young? And how come it just forgot me? Like, I felt like broken, damaged goods. And so the more that I took steps towards this path I hadn't tried yet, because I tried so many others that were like mainstream and this and that. Um, I got led to things that actually helped, right? So I got led to the foundation of spiritual development, which helped me learn how to clear my energy and ground my energy and protect my energy through meditation and connect to source and connect to my higher power and kind of clear out anything that wasn't aligned, right? And then that led me to, EFT, and it was so interesting because I was actually helping my friend who was going through her certification, and I just got that hit, which I've had before, oh crap, this is the thing that I'm supposed to learn to help others with their stuff, right? Like, it was just a clear knowing, like, oh, this is the thing, right? I was always searching for the thing to help other people, right? More deeply, and like, oh, this is the thing. So I started down the journey, getting certified, and obviously you work on your own stuff too. And the pandemic happened, so I literally had to shift my whole business. I was an artist before, no more events, so can't do my art at events. So it was like this like divinely guided journey. I feel like the whole way through,
Mhm.
from my daughter to, pain into power and somatic work. But I was sitting there like, cuz I got catapulted to start already offering it, and like I just like had this like interesting sensation of like, oh wow, like my life is changing. I'm changing. My habits are changing. How I feel every day is changing. And like I had this like fear come up, like, is it gonna come back?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
it didn't, right? It was like my new normal, my new default, my new beingness. And so then it just kept going from there. But it feels very weird when you're shifting to new realities and healing, right? And you'll have moments of being like you'll get glimmers, right, of like, oh, what's possible, and it feels really great. But you'll also be like, oh, that's so weird. I used to feel this way when this happened, but now I'm feeling this way. And so like there's it's a very gentle process, right? Because if I just pluck someone from today and they're like in the middle of their hell and I just put them exactly where they think they want to be, it's kind of like with the lottery. They'll sabotage because their inner self isn't able to contain the wonderfulness or the pleasure or the feel goodness of where they really want to be, right? So it's like this transformation of also being able to hold the energy of the feel good, right? So you don't
Mhm.
sabotage and go backwards.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay, there's so much there that I want to touch into. First, you said the words pain into power, and I honestly live by this. I've said before that as a mentor, I'm sort of the queen of sacred discomfort, and I mean that in the most beautiful of ways. I feel like if we're working together and you're not at least feeling a little bit challenged, a little bit in your edge, or a little bit uncomfortable, then I'm probably not doing my job.
Yeah.
It's because that growth comes from allowing yourself to sit with the discomfort of realizing
Hmm.
that there are parts of you, and this is the second thing that you said that I loved, that are becoming more, that are
Hmm.
becoming different, that are being alchemized, which means that you are going to need some time to grieve those parts
Yep.
and grieve the processes that they used to use in order to keep you safe, quote unquote, and to
Hmm.
live the kind of life that you had gotten accustomed to or that had become comfortable to you, to your
Hmm.
own perspective, where, yeah, you were sort of comfortable, but you were also not growing. There was no
Yeah.
expansiveness. There was no development. There was no transformation there. In that transformation comes from the spaces where that discomfort is most present for a lot of us. And it's okay. That doesn't necessarily mean that discomfort is bad or that you have to have discomfort in order to grow. There are times where you're also going to grow in the most laid back, supple, delicious, fluffy cloud possible. And that's fine. These things get to happen simultaneously. But it's one of those things where it's important for us to understand that, look, this is where I really love the work that I do. And especially for this podcast, people will know this, but especially focusing it around personal sovereignty. This is the conversation. It's at the end of the day, you're the one with the crown on your head. You're the one that gets to choose. You
Yeah.
make the moves. Yes, this happened. And now you have the choice to move in a certain direction. What do you want that to be from now on? Do you want to keep self-victimizing? Do you want to keep self-blaming? Do you want to keep self-pushing aside? Do you want to keep self-denying? Do you want more? Do you want better for yourself? And I think that that is when we start asking those deeper questions, that's when we really start even getting more uncomfortable. And that's where that pain to power comes in. Because if you're going to say, I want more for my life, if you're going to say, I want to live this amazing, incredible dream life with all the love and all the passion and all the riches and all of the above, if you're going to say
Mhm.
that, you've got to be an aligned match, which was the third thing that you brought up, which is I think is
Mhm.
really important for us to really sink our teeth into. It's you you vibrate at certain frequencies. If your vibration does not necessarily match this up here and that's the thing that you want, there are ways in which you can learn to attune to that. It's like fine tuning a string on a guitar, right? You're making sure that you're bringing it to the point where it is going to match, and when it matches and that alignment is there, everything flows differently. And
Right.
it is so good for us to know that the process, while it's ever evolving, it's ever changing, it's never one and done. I think that's the other thing too. I think we start our healing journeys and we're like, oh, I read Gabby Bernstein book. I'm good. I'm never going to need anything else in my entire life. I'm going to be happy forever and I'm going to be manifesting queen. And then something will happen and we'll be like, oh crap, what was I thinking? What do I need now? Okay, now I need Reiki. Okay, now I need this. Now I need this. And there's nothing wrong with being a seeker and wanting to try different things and explore different things and find what works for you. The thing is, even when you find what works for you, and I'm sure you can attest to this,
Mhm.
when you find what works for you, it's still going to be a growth process. Like you
Mhm.
start with EFT and you're just like, little tap here, little tap here. I am worthy. I am amazing. Like all the things. And then it gets to be something massive and it
Mhm.
will bring up fears inside of you. And this is, I think, also too, where your body will inform and say, hey, that's great that you're doing that, but I haven't dealt with this. I'm still stuck where we were and I don't know how to move through this. And that's something I think that it's important for us to understand as well, because the body does remember.
Mhm.
And again, because it lives in present time, it's good for us to help it go beyond. So, in your experience and in the work that you do with other women, what are some of the best things that we can do to help self-regulate? Because I think people hear that and everybody's like always so frustrated that will say, oh, well, you got to self-regulate. And they're like, how do you self-regulate? So, what are some of the best things or best tools, ways that you have found for yourself and for your clients to self-regulate?
Mhm. Yeah. So, definitely using EFT tapping, right? And so what that looks like is, the tapping points are top of the head. We'll just go through it real quick. The front of your eyebrow hairs, right?
Mhm.
Side of your eye, under your nose, your chin, the soft spot under your collarbone. I like to kind of smack it like that with my full hand, and then under the arm. So that's just one way to do tapping, right? And you could set a timer on your phone, 5 minutes, and just focus on breathing while you're tapping on your points, right? Or you can get more specific. Like, let's say you're feeling anxiety in your chest. You would add in the karate chop point and your setup statement, which is, even though I'm feeling this anxiety in my chest, I accept myself and honor how I'm feeling, right? And you do that 3 times, the setup statement, then move into your points, right? And you always want to measure. And this is why I love EFT too, because you're getting really in touch with how you're really feeling in your body, which is super important. I feel a lot of people either live disassociated, distracted, or numb. So it's a whole new process, really getting connected to your body. So you want to measure what you're feeling 0 to 10 before, and then you want to measure after you do a round. And if it's still above a 2, you want to do it again. It's all about repetition. I know that's not sexy, but repetition is king here. Um, Also, you wanna have a daily practice, um, and you wanna have a daily practice using tapping and meditation and grounding techniques, because in a moment of distress or when you're really triggered or activated, your cognitive thinking brain goes offline. So anything you learned or anything you heard, you're not gonna have access to it.
Mhm.
However, if you're doing it daily as a habit, it becomes second nature. And therefore, when you are in a moment of distress, you will have access to that tool or thing, right? So, some of my favorite tools to use are like breath work, right? The tapping, meditation. And you want to make sure that meditation is really helping you ground to the center of the earth, putting you in a protective bubble, which is super important, pushing everybody else's stuff out because you're allowed to have that autonomy, and pulling down a healing light from a higher power. Okay. And then a movement, right? So, like yoga or dancing or some kind of movement is important. And then some kind of practice that helps you connect with your higher power, whether it's hearing certain music or doing art or reading certain books or whatever it is, because everybody's different, right? But you want to make sure you're honoring all sides of your being. Um, and yeah, just like there's tons of tools, right? There's tons of ways to use tapping even. Like you can do anger tapping where you're just like ranting, blah, 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 blah. I can't believe this person said this or that, right? With loud music and stomping your feet. Like I'm all for throwing a full on tantrum
Yes.
to really
Yes.
get that out, right? There's also something I give clients, it's called a withhold list, which is really great. So you could do it in the spiritual realm. Like, let's say you're upset about all these things and all these people. You could just like rant it out on this piece of paper. On the other side of the piece of paper, who needs to know? Like, oh, they need to know. Maybe it impacts other people. You fold the paper and then you say, I forgive myself and all these people. Thank you, Creator, for turning this to love and light. And then you either burn this piece of paper or you shred it to tiny pieces and get it out of your house.
Mhm.
And it just is like kind of allowing a higher power to take that burden from you, because we always try to do everything on our own. And it's so
Mhm.
satisfying to rip or burn a piece, like all of that. Like it just helps change the form of it, right? To get it out of your body.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, so much I want to respond to. Well, first of all, that's just a little bit of magic for you guys. And I love the thing about magic that I love that I think a lot of people don't understand is it's spicy psychology.
Mhm.
But still, honestly, this is how I see magic a lot of the time is this is my spicy psychology. This is like helping me. It's an alchemical tool. When we talk about alchemizing something, so the idea of alchemy, a lot of times we go back to this idea of, oh, people who would turn this into gold, this would be like
Mhm.
that was the alchemy. But if you're really thinking about it, that is transmutation, meaning that is like
Mhm.
taking something that is this, for example, right? And
Mhm.
turning it into a flower or something. It's the process of transforming something so deeply that at its core, even like its DNA is completely changed. We
Yeah.
can do that for ourselves in our healing journeys. We are not meant to get stuck just because I don't know, my birth chart says that I'm this, and therefore I have to obey blah, blah, blah. Or I
Yeah.
went through trauma, therefore I'm going to always have this response to whatever. And that's not to like dismiss, understand this is coming from someone who's been very traumatized in her life. I'm not dismissing trauma. It's important to address it, it's important to have support for it. I just want us to know that there is a way through and there is a way to crack that open and to make something so potent out of it that it doesn't get to rule over us because ultimately we rule over ourselves and we
Yeah.
are sovereigns of our lives. And that's what I love about magic. That is like that alchemy, like taking that emotion and going like burn it, and it just feels so good and it seems so insignificant, but the way that we are, the way that we operate, the way that being that we are will get that and be like, ooh, okay, this is good. And it puts you back in the driver's seat instead of just being at the effect, which is that fight or flight, freeze or fawn type space. Also too, what I love about this is I'm like you. I fully have encouraged some of my clients. I don't know how many of them have actually do this. I should probably call them and ask them someday if
Mhm.
I really wanted to know. But I have fully encouraged my clients to throw a fit. Throw
Yes.
a fit right the
Mhm.
fuck now. Like if that's what you need to do, throw a fit.
Mhm.
Because if not, your body, and I'm saying there are ways to do this, by the way. When I say these things, don't throw a fit in front of your 5-year-old like right now just because you want to cry. There are ways to do this and there are safe ways for everyone to do this. You
Mhm.
always look for the highest good involved, and that means for everyone else, not in a people pleasy way, but in a sovereign way. So many
Mhm.
caveats here that I told you we
Mhm.
need to have nuance in our conversations. But there are ways where you can do this and literally throw a fit like if you were a 5-year-old,
Mhm.
and your body will thank you because if not, it just gets stuck. What I used to say a lot when I was teaching yoga, and this is like almost Jesus, like 20 some odd years ago, maybe almost 30. I don't know. I don't want to think about it. So let's pretend that I don't know the number.
Yeah.
But the point is that I used to say it's like you're taking the rug in your house, you're lifting it up and you're scooping up all the dirt under the rug. Is it gone? Okay, to the naked eye, yeah, but someone's gonna come up. You know this is gonna happen. Someone's gonna come up, they're gonna stub their toe on that rug, and all the dust is gonna fly everywhere. And that's what happens to your body. So when we treat ourselves that way, oh, I'm angry, but I can't be angry. Anger is not a good thing. Anger
Mhm.
is a low vibe thing. I can't feel
I
this, or I'm never
know.
gonna manifest. It's
Oh,
terrible. It's just
yeah.
there's so much information, but we stuff that in. What happens? It stays in your body. Dude,
Mhm.
that's not gonna leave. Like, you have to give it space. And here's what's important about that too, in terms of what you were saying that I loved, is like we get permission to exist within this. It is valid. That doesn't mean that it rules over me. Am I
Mhm.
angry? Or and in fact, it's in the words too. This is what I always say too. I try very deliberately, and I'm not always successful at this, but I try very deliberately to always shift the verbiage from "I am angry" to "I feel angry,"
Mm, or
because
part
your
of
brain will understand that in a very
Mhm.
particular way. So, hey, I feel angry, and it doesn't mean that I get to be a reactive person or to be
Mhm.
mean or to scream or to do things that are not okay. It
Yeah.
does, however, maybe mean I take myself on a date to a rage room. You know what I mean? And like smash
Yeah.
things.
Yeah, yeah. Oh my god, I love what you just said too. Because one of the biggest keys to empowerment is being more at cause with life. So being more responsive to life and having more choice. When you're in reaction, you lose choice and you lose your ability to see all your options clearly. You're literally like this, and this is all you see, right? Because you're in reaction. It like closes off opportunities and choices and everything, solutions to you.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
because you can't be receptive when you're in that state, and I mean, from someone who spent a good chunk of her adult and even young life completely dissociated. I was having this
Mhm.
conversation with my brother and my sister-in-law the other day. They were like, "How do you feel about turning 40?" There, now you guys have my age, but how do you feel about turning 40? And I'm like, the funny thing is, like, I feel like these last few birthdays I have had since my own self emancipation from all the crap that was not good for me have been the best birthdays. I feel like they have been so supple, and I have little to no memory of any of the birthdays before that. And that's because like I have very little to no memory of actually being involved and living my life, which is a really sad thing to think about, because this life is wonderful and we get to move through all of it, even the parts that are very uncomfortable or not so pretty, the ones
Mhm.
that are downright freaking scary or gross or that would just make your skin crawl. We get to go through that life though, and we get to sink our teeth into it. And when we choose to feel constantly at the effect and to completely dissociate, like you said, that is not empowerment. That is like doing this. It's like sticking your head in the sand if you were,
Mhm. Oh, yeah, yeah,
not-
like a ostrich. Yeah, yeah.
exactly. Oh
Mm.
my gosh. Yeah, I could talk about that for hours. But I love the thing about the tapping too. I want people to know this too. This so in the wild, per somatic work, right? In the wild, if like this is the example that every somatic practitioner uses, so it's just par for the course. But like in the wild, if a gazelle gets
Yeah.
chased by a lion and it survives,
Yeah,
that's why I was laughing because I know you'll know this.
yeah.
So and
Mhm,
doesn't get eaten,
mhm.
survives. The gazelle doesn't spend her life thinking, "Oh my god, that was such a horrible day. I almost died." The gazelle, especially her body, what they'll do is shake,
Shake it off. Yeah, yeah. 100%. Yeah,
right? So
yeah.
you may feel silly doing all of this, and yet what you're doing is you're moving information out
And
of
it
the
shakes it
body.
out. Yeah. Mhm.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
I also, do you know what I also find really interesting, and maybe we can get a little bit into this too, 'cause I have 2 thoughts. I'm hoping that per time we can do this. If not, I can always have you come back later.
Mhm.
Or for the live Q&A that we'll do on Instagram, we can talk about this. But one of the things that you said that I thought was really interesting was, like, your experience as a mother, maybe not so much the postpartum, but what you experienced that brought all of that back to the forefront, and how potent that medicine of that womb medicine is, whether you've had a baby or not. But like in your case, it was a very lived experience because you did give birth to this
Yeah.
human being. It brought all of that to the forefront. What was that experience like for you?
Um, it was so scary, like, yeah, and, also because it's so the pressure cooker was so fascinating. I had literally just left a job that used to eat my soul away, right? And like I actually was sitting on the decision to even have a kid or not, right? And like I didn't feel ready, obviously. And I foresaw that my partner at the time wasn't going to be there. So I foresaw that I would be a single mom. And I didn't want to be a single mom. That was never my dream or vision. Because I saw my mom be a single mom and I saw all the shit we went through, right? And I took that leap of faith, even though I had no vision, even though I had no idea where I was headed or going or how it would all work out. I had to leave my home in San Francisco. I had to move back to my mom's. And what was so interesting too is my mom's house was like in the middle of reconstruction or remodeling. And so dramatic, right? Like I was sleeping on an air mattress on a concrete floor with stripped walls, with bags of my stuff all around me, feeling like a complete failure, so lost and everything. But like I felt this life growing in my tummy. And it just like something in me knew I had to figure things out. Like I knew that my life couldn't be the same. I would have to like live life differently. Before I had her, I could say like there were many years I was very destructive, didn't want to live, didn't see the point in life, very depressed, very a lot of anxiety. And then being back at my mom's, her old tendencies coming back, even though I begged her not to. And it took me 5 years too to build up my art business to move out of my mom's. So that was all very hard while at the same time feeling so unsafe. And when I moved out of my mom's, actually, the fear of being a single mom and protecting this baby went even higher. Cause like, oh my God, I'm out here by myself. Who do I trust my kid with? One of my biggest fears was like not protecting her and something similar happening to her, like what happened
Yeah.
to me. Um, and like dating was scary because I'm like, what if this guy is like that guy was with me when I was little, right? Like all those pieces were so scary. And I did get into like therapy again, EMDR, and it was awful. Like,
Mm.
it made it where like even when I was like at events with music, doing my art, like all of a sudden I would feel like I was back in hell and didn't know who to trust, didn't know who I could turn to. And then also, this is the thing too about trauma that's really screwy and you have to work through it. If you have a passive, like a lot of trauma and abuse, even if something's unhealthy but familiar, it will feel safer to your system.
Mhm.
Whereas something that's healthy and unfamiliar will feel unsafe. And so you'd rather just stay with the thing that you know, even though it's not good for you, versus going towards the thing that you know is better for you because of how unsafe it makes you feel in your body. So navigating all that was so hard, right? And then her tantrums, and then like that would trigger my PTSD. And it was just, there were times I was scared of my little baby because her tantrums were so huge. And so I had to find a way to be able to feel so much all the time. Meditation, that meditation I'm telling you about, that like grounded, protecting my energy, really getting connected to my own essence, and really getting connected to a higher power really saved me.
Mhm. Yeah.
Because otherwise I just felt so bombarded by everyone and everything in the whole wide world and like I didn't know where to turn to trust or feel safe or who. But the more that I did that and got really in touch with my true essence, the more I was able to, open up a little bit more, and discern things better, more clearly.
Mhm. Yeah. And I love that the words getting in touch with your true essence. That is so key. This is one of those things that we miss a lot of the times. I
Mhm,
think it's valid for us to, this is like such an interesting space because on the one hand, we sometimes don't want to receive the help that we need
mhm,
and to the point where we will just like we'll obfuscate like well I think a lot of times that's why we land in self-help book hell because
mhm,
and I love self-help obviously, right? But I do feel like it got to the point where I had collected so many works and I've learned so much, right? Learned and there was so much logic behind it and there was like so much there. Yet there again, there was no depth and there was no furthering of that because what I really needed at that moment was someone to sit across from me
yeah,
and ask questions. So on the one hand, we are too quick to say, oh, I can't afford therapy, I'm not going to
Mhm.
blah, 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 or I can't afford a mentor, whatever. Because I've heard this before, and it's one of those edges where I know, like, I will walk with you. And if you're not ready, that's fine. I'm never going to force someone to make a purchase. I just want people to understand that it's okay to prioritize that versus some other things in our life because we need it so much. But at the same time, we also fall into this. I'm not going to say that it's like a flat statement, but we sometimes can fall into the space where we think the answers lie outside of ourselves. And
Mhm.
none of that is like true. The true is the answers are within you and
Yeah.
you can get to them. Sometimes you can't have quick access to them because you don't know what the blind spots are. It's like
Mhm.
if I hold this sort of this way in front of me, I'm only ever going to believe there's this. I'm never going to see the fullness of it, right? I'm never going to know that it is a full square. For those of you in the podcast, I'm holding up like a little square piece where my headphones reside. So,
Mhm.
and it's like I'm holding it like sideways where I can only see the edge of it. And I don't know what the breadth and the width and the capacity of it is. And it's the same. So we do need support, not because we are not sufficient, not because the answers are not within us, not because the power isn't within us. That's completely not the reason why. It's because sometimes we just need someone to ask of us,
Mhm.
of the higher power who is us ultimately in that regard,
Mhm.
to answer this question. Have you thought about this? And sometimes that's all it takes. So it's valid for us to take a pause and take a step back and recognize all of that and be like, oh, it's not that I need someone to fix this for me, is that I am in the way of learning this and I'm in the way of healing through my own stuff. And I sometimes just need the support. And sometimes I need the shoulder to cry on. Sometimes I need whatever it is. And we then utilize the things that we have learned, whether it's sometimes EMDR is too intense for people, but like whether it's tapping or whatever it is. And we use those
Mhm.
tools, not the end all be all for everything that is going to change your life. And that's it. You're never going to have another problem in your entire life ever again. That's not how
Yeah.
it works. We
Oh, yeah,
use
yeah,
those tools,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, to help us
Yeah.
move beyond that.
Yeah, you're actually hitting a thing. So there's a lot of misconceptions about what healing actually is. So yeah, we might as well touch on that. Healing is not a destination or a target. Healing is every day what you do for yourself.
Mhm.
To You create a healing lifestyle, right? So that you could be your best you. So yeah, that includes, your daily practice. It includes boundaries. It includes, having those tools that you need. And honestly, I will never go my life without one or two practitioners. I go see for myself for my own
Yeah.
stuff. Like, you can't afford not to have someone in your corner helping you through life because you will constantly be evolving. You're a spiritual being, you're a human being, you're a being, right? So the
Hmm.
whole thing with life is growing and evolving. So like like there's nothing that beats having transference with another human being who's walked that path to the other side so they can help support you, guide you. Their job is not to heal you. You are not broken. Their job is to support you in, connecting more deeply, um, helping guide you, but they don't do the work for you. You do the work. You're your own healer. And yeah, we need guides because we're going somewhere we've never been before. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Yeah. I'm like over here snapping my fingers because yes to everything you said. This is exactly what I've been saying for the past
Yeah.
however long I have been practicing for. But it's good for us to know that ultimately, again, it is this like this path when you shine a light into the dark,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Sometimes there are going to be things in there that you're not going to quite recognize, and that you may need someone who's been there, done that to say,
Mhm.
okay, let's
Mhm.
see if this works for you. Let's see if this pans out the way that you can benefit from it in a way that is going to be beneficial to you. So yeah, I just agree with everything that you said. And I also think, for us, generally speaking, this is the other part that I think sometimes can come from living our life in a way that we believe that there is always going to be this goal that we're going to reach, that when we get it, that is going to be like the ultimate bliss, this happy ever after concept. It
Yeah, oh,
doesn't
yeah,
necessarily have to relate to like
yeah.
romance,
Mhm.
But it's like, it's life in itself doesn't have that. Your happy ever after is you've moved on to a different plane of existence.
Mhm.
And it very much so. You get to go through different iterations, different phases. You're turning the pages of a book that never ends. It is the never ending
It
story.
is a
And
never-ending.
and
Yeah.
it's, I think that there's something so beautiful about that. We get to give ourselves that space and not look at it as, oh my gosh, why one more, I thought I had healed this and now I'm back again. And I've talked about that with several other people before too, but just to remind people, and this was an example that one of my own mentors and one of my own friends both shared with me, which I thought was brilliant. It's like, you're not on a hamster wheel, you're
Yeah.
just on a spiral staircase. Spiral staircases feel, especially depending how big and tall they are, right? I can tell you, like, after having been to Italy, like, I've experienced this, depending on how long you've been there, it feels like you're just doing the same thing. You're like, oh my God, did I not just walk by this same window, had the
Mhm.
same view 2 seconds ago? Yeah, but at a higher level.
Mhm.
Right? You're moving up. You're never staying stuck unless you're choosing to
Yeah.
put those bars around you. And one of the things that you said that I thought was interesting that I would love to touch on with the last few minutes that we have together, but it's one of those things that you'd said about, oh no, now it's gone. My ADHD has taken over. Hold on.
Oh my god.
uh, oh my God, it completely left my brain. This is the funniest thing. This has not happened live yet, but it has happened. Anyway.
Okay.
So we do get to care for ourselves in a very proactive way. Oh, this is what it was. Thank goddess. So what you said was, it put to mind this concept. I hate when people say stuff like you attract all these people into your life. Like, it's almost like it's very blame filled, as if it's
Yeah.
your fault you keep having the same relationships. It's your fault. It's like, okay, pause. It's
Mhm.
not about blame, first of all.
Mhm.
It's about recognition of comfort and patterns that
Mhm.
feel familiar.
Mhm.
Therefore, if I've eaten, like my husband says all the time, if I have grown up eating McDonald's all my life and all of a sudden I have Outback, I'm going to think Outback is the Michelin star restaurant of the world. I'm going to think it's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, our lives, how am I going to know that there's better if I haven't opened up the possibility for that exploration? And the thing about opening the door for that exploration in our lives is that sometimes that means coming to terms with the fact that we have put up with stuff that we should not have been putting up with, that we have been ingrained in patterns and dynamics and consistencies and lived experiences that do not serve us, that make
Mhm.
us feel small, or when that they don't make us, but that put us in a place where we consistently choose to feel small and be small, where we choose to settle, where we are operating under certain parameters that do not serve us. Breaking that, once again, means grieving. It means getting strong enough, courageous enough, brave enough to move beyond them. And it means opening the door up to the unknown. It means, in the metaphor that I was using, it means like spending $300-400 at a Michelin star restaurant and actually sitting down and having that meal.
Mhm.
It's like, that's important to address too, because especially in the self-help world, in the spiritual world, even in the therapy world, I think a
Yeah.
lot of times we hear stuff like that. We'll never forget one of the times that one of my therapists was like, well, why do you think you keep attracting people like this? And I was like, it's my fault? Like, I'm doing this? I'm the reason that this keeps happening to me? And 100% not. Yet we do want to be aware of the things that we feel comfortable in, that we gravitate toward, because that's all we've ever known.
Yeah, yeah, well, it's also that actually brings up 2 belief systems, right? We're like little computers, right? So, depending what we grew up with, and also this is transgenerational, right? Gets passed through generationally. So some of our beliefs are just passed on down through the ancestry there. But like if you have certain belief patterns, it's like a lens, right? And so like if you believe certain things about yourself, men, dating, the world, this and that, we have to be right. We have confirmation bias.
Yeah.
Therefore, we will literally be drawn towards all the people, places, things, experiences that make our internal belief system right. Not
Mhm.
meaning to. This is all happening very subconsciously, which is why until someone is like completely aware of like those things, we have to have compassion because without awareness, there's no choice. They're just
Mhm.
literally living in autopilot, right? Um, and yeah, and that's why that phrase when they tell you like well, what are you doing to attract la, 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 la?" It's not helpful, and it just makes someone feel broken and like, "Well, what's wrong with me?" Whereas, like, starting to help them uncover, like, maybe what some of like, how were you raised? What did you go through? What are those patterns? What are those beliefs? And help them to, process those memories. The other thing actually is a pet peeve is affirmations.
Oh my
Um,
God.
you cannot force yourself to believe something you don't
Thank
believe.
you.
You can't bypass and bullshit your own system. If there's even a tiny part of you not on board with whatever that is, I'm sorry, honey, it's you're not gonna get it. Like, you gotta honor the part of you. The other thing too is you have to honor the most unsafe part of you until it feels
Mhm,
safe, right? So you can't move forward until whatever that part of you is feels safe enough to move forward, right? So there's a lot of compassion that needs to go into play here that I feel like this is a new conversation actually happening in the world still today. It's not very wide known. A lot of the ways of the old personal development world and therapy and all that was very shamey, very blamey, very
mhm.
like, and this is also why too, like religion can get like very, it pisses me off sometimes because you're making the victim of like child sexual abuse wrong and making them
Mhm.
wrong versus like really having compassion for like what they went through and all the after effects of it and how hard that actually is to transform. Um, but yeah, you're getting me on these other tangents. But yeah, more compassion, self-compassion and compassion for others. If there's no awareness of the pattern, the conditioning, the belief systems, there is no choice. You're just literally operating on your hard drive system.
Mhm. Yeah. And oh my gosh. Okay, we totally will get on a tangent here because everything that you said I agree with. I love I just love talking to you. This is
Yeah, yeah,
fantastic.
this
But
is super.
yeah, I to that real quick, I just will say, yes, definitely always pause for a moment and just observe what it is that you are reacting to
Mhm,
and choose to become sovereign of the situation versus just being reactive and listen closely because it's true. If and I say this all the time, I probably will say this till I'm dead, and I maybe who knows, I might change the tune. But as of today, it looks like this is something that I'm going to say until I'm blue in the face, and it is that anything that guilts or shames you is trying to enslave you. Be very mindful because this goes in a lot of different ways that are going to make a lot of people very uncomfortable. But you want to take a look at that. If it's driven by guilt and shame alone, it is not for your highest good.
mhm.
So, yeah, oh my gosh, so many wonderful
Shame, it
conversations.
locks you,
Yeah.
yeah. Mhm,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, I know. Well, okay, we are unfortunately running to the end of our time, but I will
Mhm,
definitely enjoy our live conversation as well. In the meantime, tell us where people can find you, where they can connect with you, and if you have anything interesting going on that you want to share with everybody, then
mhm.
you can share it all now.
Yeah, so you can connect with me on Instagram at C_love_Lambert. You can also find my website, which is just Cassandra with a C and two S's, lovelambert.com. And then actually the only thing I would love to share is my book, my memoir, which took up until now to feel comfortable to share so openly. Into the Light, Becoming My Own Hero, is on pre-sale now and will be out on Amazon in October. So yay!
Yay! Oh my gosh, that's so exciting. I'm so happy for you.
Yeah, and thank you so
That's
much for having me.
incredible.
We could keep talking forever on all of these things and more.
Forever and
Yeah.
ever. I
Yeah.
know, I know. Okay, one final thing, and then I'll really let you go for good. And so it is I always like to ask people when they come onto the show, what is your take on what it takes to be mindfully sovereign?
Yeah, oh, all of you is welcome to the party. So it's all about owning all the parts of you and loving all of them, even the parts that you might not like or you judge or, it's really getting to the point of just loving it all of you, and all of it has a say and all of it's welcome at the table of your life.
I love it. Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
Thank you again so much.
Thank you.